Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing what the current day Salamanders Chapter know of their Primarch's fate. General spoiler warning to begin, as today we will be referencing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now, in discussing the Salamanders chapter this week, I couldn't not have at least one day focused on the big man himself. Vulkan, the Lord of Drakes, the Primarch of the Salamanders. And one of the most curious factors I was particularly interested in when it comes to Vulkan's relationship with the modern day chapter is where they actually think he is. Or at least, why did he leave? What do the chapter truly believe was his fate? For us outside the lore, while many of the Primarch's fates are technically mysteries, we have a general idea where most of the Primarchs went if they departed, or what befell them if they died, such as Guilliman, for example, being slain by his brother Fulgrim before he was restored to life. However, Vulkan's a particularly interesting case. We know he manages to get Guilliman to relent in splitting the Salamanders into multiple chapters, though this is most likely due to simple numbers, and that he will have a particular desire to pursue Fabius Bile and the Emperor's children for their hideous crimes during the Horus Heresy. After this, at present, we the reader are yet to find out what Vulkan's fate will be, until of course his temporary return for the War of the Beast saga, a time in which Vulkan chose not to reunite with his chapter, adding yet another element of mystery to what the current Salamanders actually know, what they believe. However, there's a brief passage within the novel Salamander by author Nick Kime that may actually shed some revealing light. Something that actually takes the Salamanders chapter all the way back to Istvan. The Istvan system was notorious in the historical annals of the Astartes. It held perhaps no greater resonance than that felt by the Salamanders chapter. Though now the substance of myth and ancient remembrance, it was during the Great Betrayal when the Warmaster Horus lured Vulkan and his sons into a terrible trap and almost destroyed them. The Salamanders had been a legion then, one of the Emperor's original progenitors. Turned upon by those who they thought were their brothers, the Salamanders, together with two other loyal legions, were devastated on the planet of Istvan V. In what was later recorded as the Dropsite Massacre, thousands were slain, and the sons of Vulkan pushed, almost to extinction. What miracle transpired, allowing them to avoid that doom, was a mystery some 10,000 years old, as was the fate of their beloved Primarch, who, some believed, never returned from the battle. Verses were still sung of Vulkan's heroism that day, but they were the stuff of conjecture and supposition. The truth of what happened during that disaster was lost forever. So, unbelievably, there's a clear element of doubt amongst the current day chapter that Vulkan even survived Istvan. That's the Primarch, along with most of his legion, fell that day. How different the fate of the Imperium would be were that actually true. As with all the legions who suffered at Istvan, the Salamanders clearly still bear their scars. The whole encounter, while still felt, while still forever hanging over them like a cloud, has quite simply fallen into myth. The true events of it unknown, only simply the Salamanders' road to the defense of the Imperium, alongside their brother Iron Hands and Raven Guard, and that there they were betrayed. That there the Primarch Ferrus Manus fell, and quite possibly their own Primarch too. On the face of it, you may wonder how on earth could the chapter not know Vulkan survived? How can they not know the events of Istvan when it was such a defining event? Especially when we know Vulkan was still around for the breaking of the legions, that he did lead his chapter, at least for a time. How can this be forgotten? And well, we as the reader and fans of the setting perhaps become a bit numb to how vast a time 10,000 years is. It's something we can't really quite appreciate. For us, 10,000 years ago predates even ancient Egypt. It's a beyond immense amount of time. In reality, it's no wonder things aren't remembered, or indeed are looked upon as legends or myths. If it wasn't for Rabute locked within his stasis in the Temple of Hera, his body on display for all to see, there's a good chance the very existence of the Primarchs would have become debatable, a metaphor for the Emperor's War. As it is, we know most of the history of the Imperium has been lost. By far one of the greatest difficulties Guilliman has had since returning to the galaxy, simply trying to figure out what's happened. And even the once thought infallible records of the Imperial Palace, the Emperor's custodies, have instead proven to be equally unreliable, with the custodies themselves having lost vast chunks of information on the Heresy and Crusade era. And let's not forget, some has been intentionally altered, with the Imperium at large only taught that the loyal Primarchs were created, not in fact the full 20. So while all these things may not apply specifically to the Salamanders, it does help to explain how difficult a time span 10,000 years is. However, that said, admittedly, I am surprised they can't even say for sure Vulkan survived Istvan. If there was one thing you would have expected his own chapter to keep, to know, it would have been the fate of Vulkan. The Wolves of Russ at least know he departed, leaving them his promise of the wolf time. But okay, they've still got Bjorn to retell that tale. The White Scars, however, know their Primarch was last sighted pursuing the enemy into the Webway. The Raven Guard know their Primarch departed a year to the day after his self-imposed isolation. The Imperial Fists used to know Rogel was slain aboard a Chaos vessel. However, now that's been retconned to simply finding his hand, they at least know when that transpired. And all of them know their Primarchs survived the heresy. Yet the Salamanders can't be sure. It seems for them it really is a mixture of opinions, as again can be seen by another later brief reference. The artifact's original stamp had already ignited something of a fire within the chapter. Some proposed that it meant the return of Vulkan after so many millennia in unknown isolation. Others refuted this, claiming that the Primarch was not lost on Istvan at all, but had returned already at the breaking of the legions, and whatever the chest contained, it could not relate to that. So there is some element closer to the truth that has survived and been passed down through the centuries. that Vulkan was in fact around at the breaking of the Legion, that he was there to see them become a chapter. It's a real interesting bit of lore, and I think it would be fantastic to see Tushan and the current chapter learning more of what actually happened with their Primarch. How not only did he in fact survive Istvan, but how he was imprisoned and tortured by Kurz, how he then reached Terra and was involved in the siege, how, and a 30-second spoiler warning here for the Siege of Terra, he defended the Emperor from Magnus and guarded the throne whilst Malkador occupied it, how he even returned to the Imperium during the War of the Beast saga. Think how the chapter would react to this all, how it would change their perceptions. It could create a fierce rivalry with the traitor Night Lord's Legion. It could give them an even greater sense of pride, knowing their Primarch was there at the end of the heresy, that he stood at the foot of the Golden Throne, defending his father, defending Malkador the hero. And then the revelation that Vulkan was revealed to still be alive, returning for the War of the Beast. How on earth would they react to that? I know we'd love to see a scene of Guilliman conversing with so many characters and chapters, talking to them of one of his brothers. I'll always think it was a crying shame we never got that with Dante regarding Sanguinius. However, for the Salamanders, that conversation between Guilliman and Tushan could clearly change so much for the chapter. Give them a true understanding of just who their Primarch was and what he did. The true legacy he left behind. For me, it would be absolutely awesome. Immediately straight into my top 5 most wanted Guilliman scenes. But I guess right now, or until then, we'll never know. And more importantly, neither will the Sons of Vulkan themselves. But as always everyone, what do you think? Are you surprised the Salamanders chapter knows so little of what truly transpired with their Primarch? Are you surprised that it's up for debate that he even survived the Istvan massacre? Do you think the Salamanders deserve to know a bit more of their Primarch's true legacy? The unbelievable tale of his heresy story? Does Tushan deserve to know of his Primarch's stand by his father's side? And do the Salamanders deserve to be recognised as a legion who was there at the Siege of Terra, the final line of the Emperor's defence? Does their name deserve to be up alongside the Imperial Fists, the Blood Angels, the White Scars? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.